So good morning, my name is Judith Matheson, and I'm in a wonderful backyard in wonderful nature, including the bugs this morning, but with two beautiful people. And I'm going to share something. I'm wearing today a shirt that I purchased many years ago at one of the gatherings of grandfather William Commanda, the late Algonquin spiritual leader who did much teachings around the significance of the earth and the water that is the bloodstream of earth. And on the culture of the Circle of All Nations, on their website, I'd like to start our day today by inviting Lindsay Lambert, our guest speaker, to speak to something very deep and profound to his heart. He is an inspired teacher and messenger, awakening people to the significance of remembering the power of the mighty Chaudière Falls in the heart of Ottawa, Canada. And in the National Capital Region, for years, Grandfather William Commanda worked tirelessly to help us awaken to the significance of the spirituality of the falls, to the original people of Canada, and particularly to the significance of the beauty of Mother Earth and to work with her. And so this morning I am very honored and pleased to invite a wonderful, inspired messenger of Mother Earth and the water to speak today on something very close to his heart, and that is the Chaudière Falls in Ottawa, Gatineau, Canada. So Lindsay Lambert, how did your journey start with Grandfather William Commanda?
Well, I've been going to his gatherings for many years. I've known him well, and he is concerned about his life has been spent in environmental and peace initiatives, and one of his visions was around Chaudière Falls and Chaudière Island and Victoria Island. Now, it's a very important area. The Chaudière Falls are major waterfall. They were second only to Niagara in their day, and many people considered them more interesting in their variety and setting. Like Niagara Falls, basically falls. Ours has many interesting features. The main feature was closer to the Ontario side, and it was called the Big Kettle. Chaudière is the French name given to it. It was when Champlain came through in 1813. The people called it Asticou, which means the boiler or the kettle. So Chaudière, which is French kettle, is an appropriate translation. They've been called other things. It was referred to in the 1850s. Someone made note of it as Canajo, which again means the kettle. I don't know the origin of that word. And William called them Akikpautik, which is Pipe Bowl Falls, although I understand that's quite a recent name for them. But the Chaudière were second only to Niagara. The main feature was the Big Kettle, where the falls came into almost a full circle. It's a greater arc than the Horseshoe Falls at Niagara. Over millennia, the water flow had worn the stone underneath into a great bowl, and the water would flow in, swirl around, and bubble up. There'd always be a mist, and on a bright summer's day, there would be at least one rainbow in it. And then towards the Quebec side was another feature called the Lost Chaudière. Well, the area the water flowed was completely encased in stone. But much to the amazement of visitors, the water would flow in but wouldn't come out again. It was traveling through an underground passage and then reappearing further down the river. And this wasn't all. It was quite varied. The falls have been described as 100 rivers struggling for a passage. Ottawa has been described as a city of cascades. But sadly, this all stopped in 1908 with the construction of the ring dam for the lumbering and ultimately pulp and paper industries. It was owned by E.B. Eddy. They sold it to Domtar. Domtar closed down the mills a few years ago, and so it has no industrial use now. But Ottawa Hydro now has the lease on the dam and just intends to refit it for more power generation.
Speaking of that, I remember sitting in grandfather's circles many years ago and hearing around the significance of the eels once the dam was actually blocked and the water flow stopped, the actual way of living for the original peoples was very, very much jeopardized. And they didn't realize the significance, apparently, Lindsay, around damming and generators in those days. Now, could you speak to maybe perhaps nowadays with the new technology that we have? Can you see how that would affect opening the dam, perhaps using new technology?
Now, one thing to remember is the Ottawa Hydro wants to outfit the dam for more hydro generations, like more than we already have. But there are other ways of getting electricity, like Niagara isn't dammed. The water from the turbines bypasses the falls. And then there are now vertical generators which can be placed on riverbeds without dams. They don't require dams. And there is an old hydroelectric project waiting completion just upstream. In 1899, the Metropolitan Electric Company excavated a power canal at the Deschênes Rapids. It cost them $500,000, which was serious money at the time. They ran out of funds, never built the powerhouse, abandoned the project in 1901, and then sold it to Ottawa Hydro in 1926. The heavy lifting has been done. It just needs a state-of-the-art generating station. You're talking about the eel. Now, sadly, with the generating stations, like without about a third of the eels are killed in going through a generating station. So when you have a number of them up a river, you have very few left. But there are now means of allowing them to pass. So that could be engineered into it, and we could have our falls back. If you look at any sort of history of illustrations, like prints done in Ottawa, the vast majority are of the Chaudière Falls. The first print in this area was an aquatint illustration of the Chaudière Falls, published in 1807. Like, there was no white settlement on this side of the river at the time. It was in 1800, Philemon Wright started his settlement across the river and on the Quebec side, and so this is early on. This is 1807. It was a major thing. Like, the falls have inspired poetry. There are paintings done. Cornelius Craighoff painted the falls with a wonderful sunset behind, and there's a man with a firekeeper with a fire on it. The National Gallery owns the work. Like, there are many illustrations that were done, and it was like, I have an illustration from a Dutch book of the 1890s of the Chaudière Falls. It was known worldwide, but it inspired poetry. I just have a couple of snatches of poetry. There's one which was written on May 16th, 1896 by William Pittman Lett. And this is one verse of it. It said, "Go, atheist, stand on its brink, and for a moment pause and think, while gazing on this mighty link of grand old creation's chain." And there's Charles Sangard, whose dates are 1822 to 1893, penned a verse in his poem on the Chaudière Falls before it was dammed. He said, "But man's hand built the palace, and he that reigns therein is simply man. Man turns God's gift into poison in the chalice that brimmed with nectar in the primeval plant." You weren't considered a serious Ottawa poet until you'd written a poem about the Chaudière Falls.
What year was that written? Do you have any idea, Lindsay?
No, all I have is its dates, and so I don't know specifically when that was written.
So even the original people saw this as very sacred, holy land for them.
It was sacred space for the Algonquin. It was their cathedral.
But also to the early settlers, by the sounds of those poems.
Oh yeah,
they were seeing the magnificence and the beauty of the natural flow of water.
It's inspirational. It was sacred to the Algonquin. It's a cathedral. But unlike buildings, which tend to always are exclusionary by nature, this is a cathedral that anybody can enjoy, be part of, and be inspired by. Witness the poetry. So it was a major tourist attraction. Postcards were sold. I have a number of images of them. And then I have stereoscopic photographs from the 1870s, 1880s, so you can see them in 3D. Like they're beyond living memory now, and which is the problem with them. People simply don't know what's there.
So you would like to bring them back to living memory.
Of course.
Bring the falls alive. Can you talk a little bit again about the passion of Grandfather William Commanda in freeing the falls and the significance of that being related to an international peace center that I think he was also envisioning?
Okay, he had a whole vision for the area. The center was Chaudière Falls, because that's where it starts. And then Chaudière Island, he wanted to renaturalize as parkland. Like the plan now, it's a windmill, the development group called Windmill has purchased it sort of conditionally from Domtar. And they wanted to sort of develop it, including hotel and condominiums. I personally would prefer it parkland, but this is tempered by the knowledge that those buildings will be gone in 100 years. The freed falls will be eternal. But nearby Victoria Island was very important because it is within Algonquin territory, and this is still unceded Algonquin territory. There was never a treaty. And the Algonquin have petitioned for years to get just recognition of their own rights to their own land. And the Victoria Island is very important in that it is within Algonquin territory, but it was considered neutral space where anybody could meet. Like people would come from great distances to meet here. It was a seat of communications and governance. What people would do is they'd camp on what is now Le Breton Flats, or the Canadian Museum of History. They'd leave their weapons behind and canoe to the island to meet in peace. We had people like Pontiac here. And from the archaeological record, this use goes back 5,000 years. So this is a place of government before we had our capital city here. You talk to elders, and they say that there was that there are important spiritual places, important places of power on the continent. Generally, at the confluence of rivers are important features, and these remain so because these have gone to be the centers of great cities now. The British Army established Barracks Hill, where the Parliament buildings now stand, largely to keep an eye on what the Indians were up to down below. But this has been a center of government for 5,000 years.
And also, actually, the original people, according to Douglas Cardinal, in conversation with him, he was telling me that the original people came from the actual four corners of North America at one point, east, west, north, and south, and they considered that space there very sacred space to offer tobacco in their way of honoring Mother Earth, and the flow of the falls are significant to the indigenous original people's understanding that the water is the bloodstream of Mother Earth. And what we do to the earth, we're actually doing to ourselves. So blocking up and damming different things we're seeing in North America, even in the States now, the unblocking of dams, because we're now at a state of consciousness where we're realizing the effects of what we've done and how we can actually change it using modern technology. So when we look at the significance of the Algonquin Nation here on unceded land, and the significance of Jean Piggott, could you speak to her dream as the former chairperson of the National Capital Region many years ago, having a vision of honoring the Algonquin people?
No, freeing the falls is not a new idea. People have been talking about it for years. William Commanda certainly wanted it. The Ottawa City Council wanted to free the falls in 1998 under then Mayor Bob Chiarelli. Jean Piggott wanted the falls freed when she was in charge of the National Capital Commission. They're absolutely beautiful, and I said this is something that can inspire everybody. They were a tourist attraction. Where's something else? It was there's a book by a fellow by the name of James Buell called America's Wonderlands: A Victorian Descriptive History of Our Country's Scenic Marvels. It was a book on U.S. scenery, published in 1894 in Philadelphia, but they took a Canadian side trip. It said our artists proceeded to Ottawa, 54 miles distant by Canadian Pacific Railroad. This is from the St. Lawrence, for the purpose of taking views of Chaudière Falls, which are famous alike for their size and grandeur. There's a lot of descriptions, but it's a... Where'd it go? It said it is about the Chaudière Falls, the chief attraction clusters, for a more entrancing sight can hardly be found in any part of North America.
That says a lot.
They said several views from different points of observation were taken by a photographer, but these were rejected to give place to the winter scene here presented, since it affords a more perfect idea of the falls in their glory, when the Ice King has frozen them into a vision of superlative splendor. What I've been pointing out, I can talk about the history and spiritual importance. I can address that, but one thing I've been just pointing out is the falls have far more value freed for tourism, commerce, and putting Ottawa on the map internationally than they ever will be, remaining dammed for extra hydro generation. Look what the Rideau Canal brings to Ottawa, and it's just a man-made structure. Like, it was almost filled for rail lines at one time. But the Chaudière Falls, we're the only national capital in the world with a major waterfall as its center. One person put it very well. I actually had a meeting in Paul Dewar, my MP's office, with sort of William Commanda and Douglas Cardinal. There was Romola Vicente Thumbadou, and there's a fellow who was a professor from Carleton University. I don't recall his name, but he gave me a lift home. And we were talking about the falls, and he liked to canoe. He put it well. He said, London has the Thames, Paris has the Seine. We have a waterfall.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah.
And I think in the remembering of the waterfall, a lot of people will pass the Portage Bridge and they will not even see the waterfall because what they're seeing is a dam. And many months ago, Mayor Jim Watson had a tour of the waterfall. Do you want to speak to the front page headline that was in the Ottawa Citizen at that time around how Mayor Watson saw the waterfall that day?
No, he was very impressed. He was saying we need to fast track all the approvals for Windmill to see the glorious falls. But I wrote a letter to the editor pointing out that because actually it was the article on the day before where Windmill was citing that they were going to provide public access to the spectacular Chaudière Falls, and that's a direct quote, and also sacred to the Algonquin people. And I wrote a letter to the editor, which was published on April 26th, where I point out that providing public access to the Chaudière Falls is commendable, but sadly that's not the Chaudière Falls. That's just the overflow of the ring dam. Like, the Chaudière Falls were much more important, much greater, and could be again. I've been proposing that Canada free the Chaudière Falls as a project for our 150th birthday in 2017. I've written my my MP, Paul Dewar, and that's in his writing. And then I've also written the Prime Minister Stephen Harper suggesting this, and anybody could do this. Like, write your MP, and actually we have.
Or better, write our Prime Minister of the present day and get Canadians excited and inspired about bringing back to our consciousness for future generations the beauty of natural flow of water in the capital city of Canada.
Yeah. Well, what I've been writing to my MP and the Prime Minister is saying that that freeing the falls will show our commitment to the land. It will benefit and bring together many communities. It would help heal relationships with First Nations, and the result will be eternal. Like, it will represent us well. And then again, I point out that it's we're the only national capital in the world with a major waterfall as its center, and it makes good economic sense. Then the other thing to do is in this last Saturday's newspaper there was a letter from our Mayor Jim Watson, headlined, "How would you like to celebrate Canada's 150th?" And it said, "We need to hear from you so that all the best ideas are made public and acted upon. There's no idea too big or too small to be considered." It said, "Maybe you have an idea for a festival or a special concert." I'm not sure about that. I wrote a little letter saying free the Chaudière Falls, because and then because the one thing is like Ottawa. The problem, another difficulty with the area is there's no one authority over the area. Like, it's all divided up into very complex water rights and very narrow and mutually exclusive areas of jurisdiction and influence.
Otherwise known as bureaucracy?
No, just sort of ownership. Mm-hmm. Right now, Windmill Development Group has intends to develop Chaudière Island. I spoke with one of the partners in that, and other people and representatives of Windmill, saying, you're in a position to advocate the freeing of the falls. And they said, no, we have Chaudière Island. The ring dam is under the control of Ottawa Hydro. We're not going to rile our neighbors. And then I spoke with the new CEO of the National Capital Commission. Their mandate limits them strictly to making sure that people have access to the shoreline. So any historical concern they may have had has been transferred to Canadian heritage. Ottawa. The one thing good, though, is that Ottawa Hydro isn't a private company. It is owned by the City of Ottawa. If the City of Ottawa decides that the dam should be removed, and they can make a decision. And with this one, what you do is the email information or the contact information is ottawa2017.ca, and if you search that, you'll find a place where you can just put in your suggestions. And I said I've written a couple of paragraphs on freeing the falls. If anyone else wants to put that in, if they receive lots of commentary in that regard, they'll take notice.
And today we're being, as we speak, sharing the message with some of the photos of the falls before they were actually dammed. So you folks that are seeing this film, please take an action. See how this resonates for you as a vision in which all Canadians can invite all of our elected leaders and all echelons of Canadians from all walks of life to work in one particular cause, freeing the falls. And in freeing the falls, free ourselves to actually experience working together as one for a new era of Canadians as a mature nation by our 150th birth date, inviting our children to celebrate that not only are the elders and the middle-agers, but the children are also invited to engage in caring for the water and caring for Mother Earth. And so thank you very much, Lindsay, for your time and your wonderful effort and desire and passion of bringing forth a message for all Canadians that I know speaks to my heart and to the hearts of many of us watching today. And thank you very much. This is Judith Matheson from the Heart and Soul Light Center of Gatineau, Aylmer, Quebec, and the sacred land of the Algonquin Nation that is unceded. Have a great day and take care.